Welcome to Canto Roboflow Getting Started training movie. I am Peter van der Poele and this is part 2 of the training. In part 1 I already explained the basic functionalities of Roboflow and I explained how you can set up the global settings, and we created a first hot folder workflow. A hot folder workflow that looks into a file, processes the file and then deletes it. Now we are going to add some functionality. So to edit the workflow, you click on the edit button and it brings you into the workflow setup. Automatically it will bring you to the general, but we are going to add some functionality, and this is done in the action script. It's called action script for files. This means that each file that was dropped in the drop folder will be executed with this action script. The action script can depend on what your type of workflow is. In this case, this workflow processes files, so there is one for files. The first functionality we want to add is that we want to copy the current file, a file that has been dropped, to a target folder. So I click on the new button and a window pops up showing me the different action categories. They are grouped in categories to make it easier to find the action you want to perform. In this example, you can find 13 groups. If you want to see the next 3, you have to click here on this little triangle. It only shows the first 10 in the list. And in this case, we are going to do something about something with files or folders. So we need to click here. We see that there is an action called copy move file, and we are going to use that. But before we are going to use that, we are first going to define our target folder. You will notice that the actions in Roboflow can work with objects that you create. So the first object that we need to do is that this action script needs to create the folder object to work with. So I'm going down to the second page and I select the store path as folder action. In here I will specify what my target folder is. It does not need to exist if I specify here that it can create the folder if it doesn't exist. And then I give the object a name, the output variable as it is called, or tag. So the result of this action is a folder object, and this folder object I will tag it with the name target folder. You will see the wording tag a lot in actions because text tags, text variables can be easily called upon with a tag instruction. We will see this later. So here basically I described what I want to do. So in your comment it is very important to add a little bit of help information, because once you save this, your whole workflow will be shown as a list, and then if the help gives a little bit of an explanation what this instruction does, you can read right through your script just by reading that column. The first column will always show the category you selected, which was file folder, and the action name. And the second part will show you the most important parameters of that action. So this is the best way to do that. Now, the next instruction or action we are going to add is the actual copying of the file. We want to copy the file, so we select file folder action category, and then we select the copy move file action. The window pops up with the parameters that we can set. First of all, there is a drop down which says the variable of the file to process. So internally Roboflow has for each action script that it executes, it has the objects that are available in memory, in the local memory or in the global memory. The local memory is everything that is created within this script. The global memory is whatever Roboflow has generated before. The parameters, for instance, that were in your parameters, or the global parameters that we saw in the previous training movie. Those objects are also available. A workflow, when it processes items like in this case files, or in case of a hot collection workflow, records, it offers the workflow the ability to access that object, that item, under a special tag. The tag called hot. The current item, the current file in this case, is the hot file. So in the drop down, it will show all file objects that exist in this script, but it will also automatically add the hot one, the current one. So we are going to then specify the target folder. It's a variable of folder to use. It means it's not here that you would specify type the path of the folder. No, it needs to be a variable. So it needs to be stored up front. That's why we needed that action before that stored that particular folder path as a folder object. And now here we can use that folder object in the drop down. All the folder objects available in this script will appear in the drop down. Optionally, you could specify a different file name. And so if you not only want to copy it to another location, but also change the file name, you can specify the file name here. Here it doesn't say variable of, it just says target file name. So you could type it in, type the real file name that you want to become, it to become. In this case, we want to keep the original name, so we keep the file empty, the field empty. Then the type of action, meaning you can either copy the file or move the file. In this case, we're just going to copy the file. And then again, this action has a result. The result is an output variable. What comes out of this variable gets a name, and we call that a tag. And so this variable gets a name, a tag. Again, type in a little bit of information that helps you understand what your script does. So now we have two instructions, two actions in our script, and we can test the script. So I saved my workflow, and I have prepared a couple of things in my folder. There is a drop folder. Here it is. On the left side, I've put in a file that I want to process. I copy the file into it, and this is the target folder. This is the folder we are going to copy it to. So if I click now on the start button of the workflow, the workflow will be executed, and it will automatically copy the action script list.png to the target folder. So now the last step is from the workflow that it deletes the file from the original folder. So that's what a hot folder does. The next step we can do is maybe we want to catalog, import the file into Cumulus, into a Cumulus catalog. So we can edit this workflow again, and in the list you can select where you want to add your functionality. So it will always add the action underneath the existing action. So to be able to catalog something, you need a catalog. So you need to open a catalog. So we go here and we look in the drop down for the Cumulus catalog actions. And in the Cumulus catalog actions, we find the open catalog. And then we can select in the drop down the catalog that we want to use. And we give it a name. Again, an output variable, which will get a tag. It's tagged as my catalog. And I give a little bit of explanation in the comment field. It's very important. It's something that should be kind of automatic, that once you open a catalog in your script, that you also must close it. It's a good procedure to, whenever you add an open, to automatically add a close, because otherwise you will definitely forget it, and then it will use up a lot of resources that never get cleaned up because you never close the catalog. So if I select the close catalog instruction action from the Cumulus catalog categories, then I can select in the drop down all the open catalogs, and then I can decide which one to close. In this case, there's only one. It has the tag, the variable name, my catalog, which we specified in the open instruction. And I gave a little bit of comment. So now I open and I close. And so now I'm already safe. And the next step is that we can catalog the file. So I can click on new and I can say copy. I can take the copied file. I can take my catalog, and now I can specify also the asset handling set. I can hardcode type it in here. We will see in later movies that you can also pick up the existing value from the global parameters, so that you don't have to specify hard-coded in your script which ones you want to use. But for now we are going to do it this way. And again, cataloging a file will result in a record, in a Cumulus record, and we are giving it this object in the script a name. The output variable will be called new record. Its tag will be new record. Now actually, if I were to execute this script, it would run into an error, because in my script I'd specified that it should catalog the copied file. But the copy file is here at the end of my action. So you can cut and paste instructions just by selecting them, click on the cut button, and then selecting the place where you want to add them, and then click on the paste. So this is how you can move around instructions. You can select one or more. You can even select some of the instructions, close this, go to another workflow, and paste it in the script of another workflow. So all this works nicely. So now the catalog file will use nicely the right file. And what we want to do additionally in this script is we want to set a record value. We want the record object that is stored, we want to set a value. So I can go into a new action. I select now the Cumulus record categories, and I select the set record text value. The difference with the one below, set record field value, and you have set record field text value, is in text value we will type in the value to set. In the record field value, it will ask you to specify a variable in which the text was specified before, was stored before. So that is the difference between those two actions. So I select a new record. How does it know that it's called new record? Because that is the name that we gave in the catalog instruction. I can type in the field name, or I can click on the select button to find the field to set. And I can type now my value. So I'm setting the status to new. This is what I want to do with the script. So I'm now going to click on the OK button. And then I'm dropping a file in my hot folder and I click on the start button. At any point, I can see what it is doing. And so what it says is, it found one file with a certain name, and then it has deleted it. The other steps in between, it doesn't mention them. You could add logging information to your script yourself. If we look now in the catalog, we can see that it has added the record, and it has set the field value. So congratulations, you now created your first workflow. You can find many more examples on YouTube. You can search for Canto Roboflow. In fact, the training isn't over yet, of course. There are other types of workflows that we need to discuss. The next type of workflow that I'd like to discuss with you is the hot collection workflow. In other words, processing a list of records. This means that this workflow will open a catalog that you specify. It will perform a search via a query or via a trigger. And then the records found will be processed. Each record will be processed by an action script. And then after each record is processed, it will create a bundled mail. As I explained in previous movies, Roboflow has the ability to send bundled mail instead of sending individual mail, which is also possible, but not the default. And when all records in a certain loop were processed, it will send out that mail and it will close the catalog. So since these are the basic functionalities, none of these functions need to be added, but we can add other functionalities to it. So let's dive into a workflow and let's create a new workflow. We are saying I want to find the records that were approved. So I give it a name, I say hot collection find records approved, and I select from the list the type of workflow which is called processed a list of records. This window we already know. We can now see the different parts. I'm setting it to run, for instance, every 30 seconds. And I already explained in the previous movie about the interval, so please refer to that movie to have a little bit more information about the interval of a workflow. We are going to dive right into the hot collection parameters. The first thing I want to set up is now a catalog. You can also specify multiple catalogs, but then you have to type in the names of the catalog names separated by a semicolon. You can specify the query here for this workflow. And so in this case, I'm saying, for instance, status approved. If you don't know this syntax, just go to the Cumulus client, go to the find window. On the advanced tab, you can construct this query and test it there before using it here. You will notice that if you do that, that syntax will include the GUID, the large number of a field name. You can skip those, they are not necessary, but you can keep them if you prefer. You can also use a stored query, so you can go to the Cumulus client, create a stored query, and then specify here the name of the stored query. As mentioned before, we have the notification of users. An email can be sent after every loop, and you can also work with triggers. I will explain triggers in another training movie, but basically you can go to the Cumulus native client and set a trigger, a listener, to your records, and you can listen to a field value change, to a new record coming in, a record being deleted, and this workflow can find these records that way as well. So as I said, mail was already explained in a previous movie, and you can get help on the functionality of Roboflow, and you can get help on the specific functionality of this workflow. If I click OK, we have now a new workflow that will run every 30 seconds. Not every 30 seconds, it will run, execute, sleep 30 seconds, run, execute, sleep 30 seconds. And so it's not an interval, it's a sleep period, the 30. So I don't need to click on start in this case. Only the very first time when it's new, you can click on start to make it start. Otherwise, it will be running whenever Roboflow is restarted. So now we can have a look in the log and we can see, remember that we were looking for all the records with a certain status, the status approved, and here are automatically our records that it finds that were processed. In this case, 57 records. Let's now change the workflow to work with triggers instead of a query. So I can specify a trigger folder. I'm first removing the query, and I'm going to say that I want a specific folder. It needs to be a folder that is accessible by the Cumulus server application and by the Roboflow server application. And so those two need to be able to access this particular folder. So make sure that both applications have read and write permissions in that application, in that folder. Now we go to the Cumulus client. You can right click on the catalog name and then this window will appear. Then you can click on add and this window will appear. And now, for instance, we can say that we want to listen for any record where the status changes. This is something you cannot say or do with a query. You cannot say, give me all records whose whose status changed. That is not something that works. So that's what we are going to do here. So then you specify that you want to use a Roboflow trigger and you select that folder. If the client doesn't have access to the folder, you can just copy paste the path in here as well. So then if you save this, if now I change a few records in Cumulus, you will notice that in this particular folder, these XML files will appear. It's based on these XML files that when the workflow runs, it picks up these XML files and executes them. Executing meaning that it searches for the specific records. So if we do show log, we can see that it actually found 3 records in this case. And so 3 records were available in this workflow. The 3 records that were changed. So this was a nice example of how you can work with triggers. Much like we did in the previous workflow, we can now add actions to the workflow. Working with these different records, we can add functionality like copying the file, moving the record, all kinds of stuff. The basic functionality is, for instance, that we could set a field value. This works in exactly the same way as it was working in the previous workflow. You select the set record field text value, and in there you will be able to select the record, which is the current record, the hot record, and then after that you will be able to add some more functionality in it. But we are not going to do exactly the same thing here. This was a second training movie for how to get started with Roboflow. Now that you have a feel for the hot collection, in the next workflow I will show you a little bit more about the watch folder workflow, and you will see this in the next training movie. Thank you for joining this training movie and see you later.